Hey. Quack, 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 quack. 12 and oh,
my God.
That is right. This is the Quack Podcast, the most official 12 and 0. My name's Adam Shamail. That's the next line.
And I'm Aaron C. Schroeder.
And this is the Quack Podcast, the most official, unofficial Oregon Ducks sporting podcast on the web footosphere. And Aaron, we're 10 and 0. We are 2 away from being 12 and 0.
And we're 1 week from a week off, and I can't get there soon enough because, did this game have me being like, my boys need a fucking day on the beach.
Yeah.
Today.
I agree with you there. And it's not even necessarily that it was like, whoa, we almost lost to Maryland. That was a close one.
That was never going to happen.
It's never going to happen, but it's like, you did feel like these guys need a break.
Yeah, they need a break. I think, you know what it is. What it is. I was thinking about this during the game, and it's I don't mean it negatively, but this is the game. This is the kind of game at the exact moment in the year when elite players start to stick out. Because they are not making mistakes or etc. type of things, like their bodies are still stronger. So they're not getting random little jerky injuries or something.
I would point out
it was interesting. Like, okay.
Yeah. Our center Poncho Lalulu, like he is goddamn killing it. Played every single game.
What do you think about the offensive line in general in this game though?
I thought they were great.
Well, okay. It felt like we were getting swallowed up. For me,
it was a little bit different. Like
fast, a lot of having to fast pass, right?
Yeah, I think that was kind of our plan overall.
Okay, that was part of the plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think because we were switching around right guard. And overall, I think it worked pretty well. I don't think there was much drop off at all, and that's who I was most afraid of. I was actually more afraid of Harper. Going down, which he did not play in this game.
Yeah.
Then Tez Johnson being out for a little while, which just sounds like he will be back by at least the playoffs, you'd hope. But when you look in retrospect, it's like we fumbled that kick.
Yeah.
Luckily we jumped on it, but we did fumble that. And that was Evan Stewart, which felt like, Tez would have been back there. He probably wouldn't have fumbled. He's pretty dang good at that.
Who knows? You never know.
Early on, who knows? But early on, our problems were not catching the ball. Like Ferguson and a couple other players.
Or early on, our problems were letting them convert or getting 15-yard penalties stacked up against us on a 4th down punt.
Yeah. Well, that's what it was too, is that so much of their success, offensive success for Maryland, was our penalties.
Defensive. And that's the crew that I'm like, y'all are the ones that need a day on the beach because y'all have been rocking so hard.
Yeah.
It's starting to crack a little bit. And I think you're putting, they are in a high pressure situation. It sucks. I don't ever want any human to have to be in that kind of a mental state, like ever. But that's the game, I guess. But yeah, they need a massage and a spa.
I agree. Oh, I'm also getting
they
nervous.
deserve it, like I can't fault them. I do not like the penalties. I do not like the errors and the mistakes, but I cannot fault them because they are 20.
Yeah.
And
and last week,
man, there's so
on
much
the road against Michigan in front of like 100 plus thousand people, we had like 2 penalties, like on the road.
Right. They've been so hardcore.
Yeah.
But I will also say this. A fucka those refs, because there was so much stuff that I'm looking at being like, how is it that we're getting calls on the slightest of touches?
A lot of holding.
But these douches over here, you're just allowing to, have a little bit more of a free game because the candy cap exists and they need that advantage to make this at all an interesting watch for the viewer. These refs, look, I understand that the apologist Hitler will be on in a little bit to, cop-splain this to us about why the refs have such a hard job. But end of the day, I'm an Oregon Ducks fan, and I did not like what they were doing to my boys.
Overall, I feel like most of the calls were pretty fair. We did run that.
Oh, were they?
I mean, I think so. I don't know.
I don't know. I just didn't.
I know Hits the Day loves
to
talk about specific ref calls, so that should be good. One thing I just want to point out.
I didn't like it, sir.
One thing I
called on shit, and they're not, and that was bullshit.
The most important part of this entire game, in my opinion, or the most memorable, was definitely us in the third quarter. Because again, we're cursed with these terrible third quarters, and I know some of a big chunk of it is conservative play calling, or like just in the situation being like, we got a lead, we can punt, or let's play something a little safer here. I do think there's that. I also think there's some good adjustments from these other teams that are happening, and then there's some minor execution errors. Like a pass being a little off, someone not catching. Our offensive line not getting quite as good of a push in the third quarter as the first half. Something's, up a little bit. I don't think it really matters, but I loved that Dan Lanning, after he was about to go like 3 and out for the second time in the third quarter, we're deep in our own territory, is like, fuck it. We're fake punt going straight to Jordan Birch, a defensive player, and he's we convert that first down, and then it's just like to the running back, to the tight end, so just a big man all around. Then we get into the end zone, we throw a touchdown to an offensive lineman.
Yeah,
2-point conversion. I think a direct snap. Josh Connerly gets in it. I just love that, like, almost you could argue a completely like unnecessary. It's always necessary to score points, but him unloading all those trick plays and such,
wasn't that weird?
I think that was Dan Lanning being like so pissed at the slot machine that he just puts $100 in. It's like, I'm gonna win something. Like,
okay, because to me, the whole time, that whole sequence. My thought was like, is this what it's actually going to take to beat this team? Like, it felt like, are we already having to go bells and whistles on this thing?
I don't think it was to beat
them.
They're
freakishly keeping us from scoring?
I think it was to score in the third. Apparently, that's what it's going to take. I don't know. Or to get the team maybe like locked in. Maybe that's what it is.
That's what I was also wondering. I was like, maybe this is the guys are, like we said, they need a massage day.
Yeah.
Maybe this was his way to reinvigorate that energy, because like it did feel like there was a little bit of pep missing.
Yeah. No, I think
I still blame the refs 100% for everything. I'll die on this hill if they can't ever talk me off of it.
When you throw a touchdown to, like an offensive lineman who isn't your starting offensive lineman, Wilson, when you get him a score, that is going to get your team pretty freaking rallied, like, pretty stoked. And I think you saw that. And Josh Connerly gets some when Jordan Birch, who was coming off injury, gets a trick play. Like, I feel like it was to try to get people a little more locked in. Oh, and, also, we got to say before we bring on Hith, just the obvious, Dylan Gabriel.
Before we bring on facts.
Yeah. Dylan Gabriel.
Let's keep living in rhetoric. I enjoy it more.
We live in a post-fact society.
I think we do. It's official, baby.
It's official. But I think also we got to mention Dylan Gabriel, most touchdowns scored, full stop, in college football.
That's pretty dope. Although he was tied against their quarterback, right?
No, not their quarterback. No.
Oh, I thought it was the same
I think it was
guy.
like Casey Keenum or something. I forget.
It was, and I thought that's who their quarterback was. I don't know who their quarterback is.
Why, Aaron?
Why would I?
Billy Edwards Jr., of course.
Oh, well, I got to tell you this. I will say I'm disappointed that my big prediction didn't come true, and that we find world peace and can come to a handshake and a hug at the end.
Oh yeah, I hated that shit. That was I forget what mine was. I think it was like scoop and score or something. I don't know. I loved all the turnovers. That was freaking huge.
Yeah,
very fun.
Dude. Bravo. Batted passes. Like,
oh, dude, we got to bring that up. That was amazing. So amazing. It's like just at the line. It
constant.
We had Chris Boucher and Kenny Wooten out there.
Yeah.
Just boom, boom, boom. Oh, and Aaron, I'm going to say this really quick. I don't really want to.
I think we had more batted passes than flags.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Easy that. I'm going to say this really quick, and then we're going to get off of it.
Okay.
Kelly Graves may be back. Kelly Graves may have his team in a pretty good spot. They just got an upset win over number 12 Baylor. And more importantly than that, this new face squad actually looked like there was some talent, some athleticism, and some fire. That's what made me most happy. So I'm going to say I'll eat crow. I mean, this, we'll still see where the season's going, still see who's sticking around. But it did look like a pretty drastically different women's basketball team. And I was happy to see it. Men's team still undefeated. They haven't really played anyone, but yeah, that's basketball. Okay, let us bring on someone from Addicted to Quack. That is right.
I wonder who it could be.
We have
the one,
the only Hithliday one. How you doing, Hithliday?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. We won.
Sorry that I had to attack you earlier, but it's just where I was. It's where my energy was.
We know you love the refs. We know you respect.
Apparently, a large portion of the world is in a post-fact space, so I understand there.
No joke, my man. No joke. That is right. Well, we won a game. We beat Maryland. My first thing that comes to mind is I remember last week, Hith, you were saying, I am going to be really pissed off if we just think that the way to attack this Maryland team is to just blitz, unleash the dogs, just because that's not how you beat this team. How'd we do on that front? It felt like overall that wasn't our MO, but are you happy with Lupoy? Score aside.
First of all, I was listening to you talk before I hopped on. You're definitely correct that Oregon won this game in large part due to the defensive turnovers, winning the turnover battle 3-0. The defense absolutely shut down Maryland's run game. and a ton of swats, which was definitely a coached strategy. Like, watching the tape closely. Tristan's film review article went up just a little bit before we hopped on the podcast, and it definitely notes this as well. They knew that due to the quick passing offense that they weren't going to get to the quarterback, and so a lot of the pressure that they were bringing wasn't because the ball was going to be out of the quarterback's hands. So like they knew that the ball was going to be out of the quarterback's hands fast, and so like I don't actually think there's any sacks in this game technically, although maybe that fumble gets counted as a sack. I'm not sure.
On ESPN, it says we got 2 sacks.
Okay,
one from Ware Hudson,
but like it was clear from watching the tape that much of the pressure or that Oregon would bring, whether it was blitz or not a blitz, was about just getting more hands up. Like you could see, you could see it was like a forest of hands. They knew that they were trying to do that. And also that, that's not just because they knew the ball was going to be out fast, but because the particular types of throws that they have to throw are going to be low trajectory shot. They're not going to be rainbow shots. They're going to be low trajectory shots.
Yeah.
And so, they're the types that are more susceptible for knockdown. So definitely the knockdown strategy was part of the defensive strategy.
It was like a 90s hip hop concert. There were so many hands in the air.
So there are
Is that House of Pain?
Of defensive elements in this game. There's strategic defensive consciousness in this game, and the defense, you could make an argument, won this game in a game in which the offense there were elements in which the offense was misfiring. It was funny. I was texting people who I knew were at the game and was like, is it raining there? Because it seemed like, there was a lot of sloppiness in it.
I almost texted Adam the same thing. That's so funny.
And it seemed like it was affecting both teams. Like, the punter had a hard time hanging, Maryland's punter, had dropped the punt at one point. At another point, it wasn't the punter, it was the long snapper couldn't deliver the ball to him correctly, which usually it was like, is the ball wet? I tallied 6 different drops for Oregon receivers,
which is uncharacteristic too.
Yeah, and it seemed like it was affecting both teams. It sort of seemed like it was weird because Maryland was coming off of a bye too. For Oregon to be like, man, they could really use a bye at this point.
That's what Aaron's been saying.
Yeah, that's what I believe still.
Yeah.
So in a game in which there's some sloppiness going around, and the offense wasn't exactly clicking. I'll talk a little bit more about that, later. It's like the defense, won them this game, and so it might feel weird for me to then come down real hard on Coach Lupoi, but yeah, I did make that very specific prediction that look, every team that's beaten Maryland has used a specific strategy against them, which and it's borne out in the statistics. Like, don't blitz on early downs because it's a quick passing, ton of screen offense, and instead reserve your blitzes for late downs. When they're going to be in longer yardage, they have to wait for the routes to develop, and they're not going to throw screens. That's when you blitz. And like the stats totally showed that. I had a graph in my article. I subsequently tweeted that graph out again, that's like, look, the disparity is clear. They do better against the blitz on early downs. They do worse against the blitz, on late downs. And there was one team that Maryland played that flipped it on its head, that blitzed on early downs, and they blitzed themselves into a loss, and that was USC. And like I was all like, I lost a ton of respect for Danton Lynn because he blitzed himself into a loss. And so, I sure hope that Coach Lupoi doesn't do that. Well, I ran the numbers. It's not like Oregon was blitzing on every first and second down. They only did it 8 times. And the other that's the pre the graph that Adam is showing for those who are watching this is the graph of pre-Oregon, in which it shows there's a differential in which you should not blitz on early downs, you should blitz on late downs.
Fascinating.
But here's the, so Oregon doesn't blitz on every first and second down. It's like, they blitz on 8 of them, and they don't blitz on, like, I forget, it's like 19 of them. So it's like, it's not even close to the majority. But here's the thing, all 8 times that Oregon blitzed on first or second down, Maryland completed the pass for a successful play and averaged 14.5 yards per completion. I mean, literally, literally 100% of the time, it was a failure. And it was like, look, dude, like, you flipping knew this was going to happen. Why do you keep doing this? You know? And then conversely, just like that chart showed, you should bring pressure on third down, because for the equal and opposite reasons, like, they're going to be in a situation where they're vulnerable to blitzing and they can't pull off the quick pass. That's when you're supposed to hammer them with the blitz, and that's when Lupoi backs off. He only blitzes 3 times, and he doesn't bring pressure on the other, like, I forget what it is, like 26 times. And it's like and again, the numbers are clear. Like, 2 out of the 3 times that he brings pressure, like, Oregon gets a successful, a happy result, and on the one time that it doesn't, it's like a 4-yard completion, and even that's not really the pressure's fault. It was a quick pass that should have been dead, and just the linebacker couldn't quite bring the receiver down. So it's like, Lupoi got the blitz strategy completely upside down, which was, by the way, I get a point for this, right? My specific prediction was 100% correct, that he was gonna,
he certainly
going to get the blitz strategy backwards. Like, I don't, it's like, did you watch film, guys? And then, as long as I'm complaining about coordinators,
that's
like
what this show's for, baby.
Will Stein, like, this is another one of his limp dick games in which he can't figure out to throw the ball downfield. This is the worst pass defense, the worst secondary that Oregon's going to play all year. Like, their secondary is like terrible, and like none. He has like 0 air yards of 20 plus, or 0 throws of 20 plus air yards in the entire game. It is nothing but screens and short throws. They have I was noting that Maryland was unusual for having a 14.8% screen pass rate, going into this game. Oregon has a 17% screen pass rate, in this game that gained 3.4 yards per attempt. Now, like, 6 out of the 9 of them are successful plays. Like, they pick up, just enough yards, to stay ahead of the sticks. But
3.4 is exactly enough.
Yeah, it's thing. Like, are you like 3.4 yards? Like, Oregon, their overall pass average is 5.09, yards per pass attempt in this game. I mean, they are barely trickling the ball down the field. It is their lowest. The success rate has to do with some of the drops, that's true, but it's like their explosive play rate, is in the toilet. It's 9%, and they're just not pushing the ball down the field. And it's like, guys, I don't understand. Like, periodically, like, he's already a lot of short and intermediate passes, like, that's been well known for a couple of years now. But it's like, he at least periodically, mixes in, takes the top off, and it's
keep
like,
it honest,
and because he's got receivers to do that. And I understand, Tez Johnson is out, Holden was out for a portion of this game. He took it looked like a sort of a stinger to the thigh. But it's like, dude, that's what you saw from Maryland's defense, was they were, they went from cover 2 to cover 1 halfway through the first quarter in this game. They were just not afraid of, and that was a big part of why Oregon's run game was getting slowed down, and why the intermediate pass game was getting slowed down. It was like Maryland was not afraid of Oregon's, deep shots, and like, because Stein wasn't doing anything about it. And it's like, and frankly, that is, I think, more than anything else, what that third quarter drive with the trick plays and the fake punt was about. Was, I think, frankly, my honest opinion about that, this is going to sound like provocative and hyperbolic, but it is my honest opinion. My opinion about that was that was Dan Lanning grabbing the headset from Will Stein and saying, fuck this shit, dude. I am in charge of this. We are scoring points.
Right.
That's what I mean, it truly felt, and like literally when the camera looks over at Dan Lanning and with his like response last week when the sideline reporter was like, so it seems like you got a problem in the third quarter, and he's like, no, it's an opportunity. It felt like him being furious that it's this hard to do something in the third quarter.
I mean, I don't think it's about the third quarter. Like, I don't think it's about the third quarter at all. In fact, I thought your description, when I was listening to your description, was correct. It's about game situations. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the fact that it's a third quarter is a coincidence. But in that game situation, when they were looking at, look, this is unlike those situations, when it was not a competitive situation, and it's fine to eat 7 minutes, like the Michigan game the previous week, when it was fine, in fact advantageous, to eat 7 minutes of clock, and when you're up by 18 or whatever it is points. In this situation, it's like it was 11 points. And you're handing a ball back to an offense that you have not been able to stop, and you keep committing fouls against, and whether you think those fouls are appropriate or not. And frankly, I had some problems with some of the officiating in this game.
You goddamn right you did.
I didn't have problems with the pass interference calls. Every one of the pass interference calls was correct.
No,
and like one or two they didn't call that could have been there.
The very first one, Tyshim Johnson. It's I had like I said, I had some problems with some of the officiating, like that run, that punt. One of the very, that should not have been roughing. That should have been running into, which, given that it was 4th and 8, would have just put them at 4th and 3, because they had a false start before the punt. Would have put them back at 4th and 3 again. They would have just punted. That was not roughing in any way, shape, or form. In fact, he's blocked into it, and don't get me started on blocking into. I tweeted something about that too. Oregon couldn't cover those guys. This is a problem. Frankly, we're going to be talking about this in January. Like, Oregon does not have elite athletes in its secondary. They have veterans in their secondary. The veterans need to be they need to not be making mistakes against an RPO offense, like stepping down against play action. That was I was pretty mad at Oregon's safeties for, biting on runs. Like, Maryland doesn't have a run game. You don't need to be doing that, Mr. Safety. You need to be staying up high, to help against, the pass so that it doesn't go for 34 yards. When Nico Reed gets his eyes caught in the backfield. That was embarrassing. Who should be most embarrassed, because it's where the buck stops, is the defensive coordinator. Don't bite on the run against a team that doesn't have a run game, when the strength of your team, where all the talent is the defensive front that just absolutely slams the door on the run. What Maryland's run success rate, Oregon's is glowing dark green, and they're 61.9% defensive rush success rate. Maryland rushed for 2.8 yards per carry adjusted. They had 0 explosive runs. What are you ever doing stepping down on the run against an RPO offense? Stay back, play the pass is the only way that they're ever moving the ball. And it would help against it when you can't stop committing pass interference flags, if the safety were ever around to help. How do you screw that up? How do you watch film and not realize it's an RPO offense? The safety needs to play the pass, not the run. Did you not watch film on this team, Tosh? That's what I felt about this game was like. Did Oregon's offensive coordinators not watch any film on Maryland? And then you add to that, the sloppiness factor, and some weird, the in every game, the penalty imbalance, and that's how you get this result.
These coordinators going, well, I'm going to fall back to what we do, what we like to do, or is this them putting in okay, here is our plan, and the plan is just wrong? I know that,
but also
that what you just said. Okay. I think that they do what they want to do, and some teams the plan is just wrong.
Well, let me ask you this, Ithilday, because it seems like we're going a little heavy on our coaching staff right now.
Hey, I'm down. Now's the time, dude.
What is right? Exactly. So what I just want to make sure that I'm gauging correctly, because I am the dumb in the room, is what are we gauging their performance on? Are we talking about we are being heavy on them because we're talking about the next national champion team, or are we being heavy on them as comparative to just your average coach? Does that make sense? Like, where's our barometer on their job performance?
I guess that's a good question, Aaron. I would say the way that I always evaluate, coaches. I was about to talk about my professional life, and wait, I shouldn't talk about that. Right. The way that I always evaluate coaches is within a vacuum, and the way that I would, the way that I would grade tests if I were a teacher, which is, it is possible to get a 100% on this test. Every question has a right and a wrong answer, and every time you get a wrong answer, you get a red X next to it, and then I count up the number of red X's, and if you have 10% of, more than 10% of red X's, now you get a B. And if you have more than 20%, now you get a C. And if you have more than 30, and if I'm counting up a lot of red X's, then I will really lay into you.
So you would say from week to week, we've started seeing maybe the coaching staff has slipped from being an A+ student to being kind of a C+, B-.
It's more like every week you get a quiz, and I don't think there's such a thing as an A+ student or a B+ student, because that's an identity question. I don't believe in identity. I just believe in present performance.
Sure.
If you got an A on this week's test, you get an A sticker, and you get a banana sticker. If you got a D on this week's test, then you get a D on your test, and I wag my finger at you. Like, this is me wagging my finger at them. They made a bunch of mistakes. Like, you're paid not to make mistakes. You made mistakes, so I make fun of you. It's not relative to anything other than don't make mistakes, you know.
So
and for the same reason, like, here, I'll give you an alternate one.
Week.
Ryan Day at Ohio State. Ryan Day at Ohio State has a team that wins, virtually every game that they play. This season has won every game they play except for one game in Autzen by 1 point. I still rate him as middling to bottom of coaches in the Big Ten, because I am able to administer a test to him, right? Like, I can look at the way that he assembles his roster, assembles his coaching staff, makes in-game decisions, and game planning decisions, and those are a series of questions in which I can evaluate right, wrong answers, and he comes up with a bunch of wrong answers, and so I wind up giving him C grades on a bunch of stuff. And his team is so talented that a C coach still wins all those games, right? Like, that isn't. I don't think that should be controversial to anybody.
Yeah,
that guy can be a C coach, and with the talent that he has, still win a bunch of games, because a C coach with that talent beats this league. Because Jesus Christ, this league, right? Well, guess what? This game, I'm not saying all the games, but this game, Oregon's coaching staff turned in, with the exception of Dan Lanning putting his foot down on that drive. This game, Oregon's coaching staff turned in a C, maybe D performance. C, because, like I said, Oregon had some good stuff. No, Oregon had some good stuff. That's why I let off saying, the get your hands up strategy and some other things. But in some aspects turned in, a less than stellar performance, and still won the game by 3 scores. Well, why'd they do that? Well, because they just massively out-talent Maryland, right? And in other aspects, like completely shutting down their run game. And also they faced Mike Loxley, who's like a D coach. That guy, hey, Mike, you can't run the ball at all. Why are you doing that 40% of the time? Like...
So maybe what we're trying to say here is it's more than just the players that need a massage and a spa day. Maybe the coaching staff needs to take a little...
No, they need to hit the books, actually.
Do they?
Need to hit the film room.
Somebody quit blowing smoke up their skirts.
They get paid a lot of money.
Well, Right, but at the beginning of the season, it did seem like we were praising them a lot more than we are now.
Maybe you were.
I mean,
I don't know.
Perhaps that is the
I was not praising them against
question that you were the way that you were phrasing your question, Aaron, was a relative question. Like perhaps expectations had been raised, and now you expect perfection out of them, whereas earlier you were not.
Got you. Okay.
I have always
because we are in
perfection.
fact.
I have always expected 100% on the test.
And I always expect the worst to happen eventually.
I mean, it's destined.
Oh, yeah. Right guard, I believe we had a rotation there, though I feel like I saw Iuli a lot more.
The first 3 drives was Dave Iuli at right guard. This appeared to be planned. The first 3 drives was Dave Iuli. The next 3 drives, so drives 4, 5, and 6, was Kuika Rogers, and then the next 3 drives went back to Dave Iuli, and then I'm not sure about the final 2 drives because I didn't chart them. I considered them to be garbage time.
Fair enough. I was more afraid of the Harper injury going into this than the Tez Johnson injury, because I was like, we got pass catchers, but the O-line, in the first couple of weeks, that scared me. Actually, it seemed like kind of the reverse, where it was O-line to my untrained eye looked pretty spot on, like we had.
I didn't have a problem with you. This is something, I Tristan's article, I was editing it this morning. Tristan went harder on the O-line than I did. I thought the O-line was fine. I didn't really, and here's the thing. To the extent that there were, offensive line issues at all in this game, it wasn't the right guard. It wasn't. It was neither Iuli nor Rogers. Not to say that they played absolutely perfectly, but their grades were not out of line with anybody else's. It was just a smattering, throughout the line. But it was, Cornelius would get pushed back. It was, veterans were getting, were losing reps at the same rate that the guys who would Iuli had never started.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So it's like, the error rates were low and it was well distributed. So I don't think you could be blamed on that. And I'm not really sure why Tristan did, but I don't step in and change his conclusions. I'll do it. Make sure that his grammar is correct.
Is he bad at grammar?
Everybody. I mean, he was writing that article at 11 o'clock at night because he was traveling.
Not what you speak of.
That used to be my job with Hithode, is I would look over Hithode's articles and I'd I'd read, and then there would be one extra O or like a comma, and I'd be like, oh yes, and I'd get rid of that, and I'd be like, I've done my job. It was very nice.
The offensive line didn't really seem to have an issue, and that's one of the things that I had noted about Maryland, and again was something that I was sort of beefing with Will Stein about, is that the one halfway decent thing about their offense is their 3 starting defensive linemen, their 3 down linemen are not bad. They're veterans, and you got better things to do than try to run up the middle. Do anything else. Wait for the backups to go in or run to the outside, run off the C gaps, run RPOs off of it. It's not that you can't run up the middle. You can do it, do it a few times to keep the defense honest, but don't spend all day doing it because it's the one hard point in their defense. And then what does Will Stein do?
But you mentioned last week, you were like, that's a good test to see how Homie G does against blah, 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 because and those are where the veterans
I can report, it's not for if folks were worried, oh, hey, they played Dave Iuli and Kuika Rogers, how did they do compared to the rest of the team going up against that hard point? How did they do at that test? What I can say is no worse than the rest of the guys did. So that's good.
All right.
just, so that's fine. I don't really think that there was a line in Tristan's article in which he speculated that perhaps some of Oregon's sloppiness or unwillingness to push the ball down the field was due to being nervous about the offensive line situation. And so they kept it conservative for that reason. I don't agree with either that strategy or that conclusion out of Tristan, because I didn't. I saw
like
neither.
Maybe we should get
that
Tristan on the show to defend himself.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, we're adults. We can disagree. Like I mean, I'm his hype man. I literally post his article everywhere that I'm allowed to, and yeah, he does a fantastic job. Like I really couldn't be happier, and he's taken just a massive project off of my plate every week. It makes my articles way better that I don't have to spend 50% of my week doing.
This is what Adam used to say about you.
Well, yeah, but I didn't have to do jack shit. It was great.
Yeah. No, I love Tristan to pieces. Occasionally we disagree on stuff, but like if we agreed on everything, it would be that'd be pointless. Like
every married couple does, my brother.
You don't go get clones. Like that's useless. Intellectual diversity is important. Anyway, I didn't think that was it. Like I think it was just Will Stein limp dick game and Dylan Gabriel being a little off and the receivers kind of having bad hands today or that day. So beats me. It didn't stop them from scoring on a number of drives. It did stop them from scoring on a few. And then like the other thing is, look, attrition is just sort of happening at this point. They're down a lot of wide receivers, at this point. I mean, like
it was nice to see Gary Bryant Jr. there, but
but I mean, at one point, they're playing, like they played a couple entire drives out of 12 personnel because like that's it. They only had Evan Stewart and Justice Lowe that they felt were playable, wide receivers at this point. Because they don't have, they don't feel comfortable putting on the field Gary Bryant, Tez Johnson, Kyler Casper, or Trayshawn Holden.
Golly, I didn't realize it.
And I mean, and the other thing is that Oregon's tight end blocking, in a couple of these plays, is, like, I think Kenyon Sadiq is going to be, a great player next year. His blocking grades in this game, leave a little something to be desired. Patrick Herbert's blocking grades in this game leave a little something to be desired. Actually, this was Patrick Herbert's worst game of the year by far.
This seemed like a bad game for tight ends. For us, honestly, like there was a couple, like, at least overall, a couple passes that Ferguson could have had, hit him in the hand.
Yeah, I mean, just like I don't know, there's nobody sort of to single out. It's just overall like everybody played a sort of sloppy game, and then which is survivable if your offensive coordinator's in the in his bag. But I didn't think Will Stein was in his bag in this game. So that's it. That's how you get sort of a sloppy performance, and that's how you get Dan Lanning putting his foot down. And thank God for Dan Lanning.
Yeah, and man, the balls on that guy, that's insane.
And then also thank God for the defense. Thank God for the defense. Doing their job against the run, doing so that
batting in balls,
batting balls like crazy,
and getting. And get. I mean, the other thing that should be said about the defense is that they're forcing Maryland to get into like high leverage plays, right? Like Maryland's got to get, they've got to get. In order for Maryland to even make this close, they've got to get everything that happened. They've got to get that roughing the punter flag. They've got to get every one of the flags that they got. They have to convert a bunch of third and a fourth down. On passes. They're not doing right. Like they have to go on these very long drives. Because they're not really that was the thing, is that even though that they would move the ball and they'd be 12-yard passes that they only hit one explosive. now there were a bunch of penalties, and the penalties are automatic first downs. But like, they're not really hitting explosives, so they have to march the field, and like Maryland would only really be scary if they were quick scoring, because Oregon had the ability to sit on the ball. Like if, because Oregon gets out to a lead, they could, if they needed to, they could execute a sit on the ball strategy, which Maryland could only fight if they were a quick scoring offense, and they couldn't score quickly. Like Maryland would,
and on an
which was why Dan Lanning put his foot down on that drive, is that he needed to create some separation, and is why they went for 2 to make it 29-10, right? To make it a 19-point game, because there's a difference between 18 and 19, right? So like, that because that enables it, because at that point in the game, they're giving the ball to Maryland then with a quarter and a half to play and a 19-point lead. Maryland would have to execute multiple quick scores, which they haven't been able to do, and they would have to not turn over the ball, which they hadn't been able to do, and Oregon could just sit on it, which actually Oregon does like sit on the ball a couple different times later in the game. Like they go a much more heavy rush. They accidentally score on one of them. I don't think actually they meant to score on their second to last one, but like they throw a little crossing route on third down. Then I think Evan Stewart was supposed to just sort of go out of bounds, but instead he turns it upfield and scores. And it's like, you were supposed to eat the clock there, Evan.
He's like, I got money on this game. All right. We got a line to cover. Yeah. I agree. And in the end, on a pretty off day for us, where we didn't look very sharp, they scored 2 touchdowns and a field goal.
And that was one of their touchdown drives is a drive in which they if you count the sack that they take as negative yardage, like if you put that into the total, they that touchdown drive, they get more. Maryland gets more yards through penalties than they get through from scrimmage, because it's a 9-yard interference penalty, or a 12-yard it's a 9-yard interference penalty and a 12-yard face mask penalty on that sack. But if you count the sack yardage, those 2 penalties, the 21 yards of penalties outweighs the total amount of yards that they marched down the field.
Jeez.
I bet you
a 4-yard, there was another penalty too.
I bet your football team was just shocked to see the GOAT Sabrina Ionescu on the field, and that just threw them all off. And
she was also that like the women's basketball game and the football game, you can't beat the Ducks with the Queen in the house, right? Like,
hell
the trophy.
No.
Yeah,
wasn't the baseball team also there?
Yeah, they were there because they had that
went on
moment
the field
where
to say what's up to their
where
bud.
Bryce Betcher came over and they were all stoked about it. That was very fun. I mean, honestly, hey, we won. We kicked some ass. Go Ducks. I am nervous.
I mean, as they say, win your clunkers, right?
Yeah.
Like Oregon was probably, have you not heard that one before, Aaron?
You gotta listen to
when you're
verbal,
every team's gonna have a clunker. Every team's gonna play a game in which their focus is a little off, and if
it's that time of the year.
If you're not a championship caliber team, what happens to you is you slip up and you lose it. Right. So that's what Washington found out when they played Rutgers,
Georgia,
right?
Or number 4, Miami, who both lost. Yeah.
BYU got a gift, and
God,
they wound up beating Utah. But this was a weekend in which the 4. So there are 4 power conference teams. Their highest ranked team for each of them was Oregon for the Big 10, BYU for the Big 12, Miami for the ACC, and Georgia for the SEC.
Yeah.
And until that last second miracle for BYU, it was going to be 1-3. Where Oregon was the only team that won.
According to Utah, actually, BYU lost
right.
that game.
Yeah, according to Utah's athletic director, he's really making a real horse's ass of himself.
No fucking joke.
Can we
don't
just
even
go
want to
ahead?
be in the Big 12 now. What was that?
I feel like we should just go ahead and presume that this national championship is going to be the Ducks versus Longhorns, right? Like that's where we're headed.
Yeah,
right?
you never. I don't know if the Longhorns will get there, buddy. I know
They
we'll
won.
be there. I know we'll be there. Well, this is what I want, Aaron. This would be Chimeo's choices for the top 4. Okay.
Oh boy.
I want Oregon to represent the Big 10.
Yes.
I want BYU to represent the Big 12. I want SMU to represent the ACC, and I want Texas to win the SEC.
Yes.
Hithloday, what would be interesting about those 4 choices?
Well, the most interesting thing is that Oregon will mop the floor with those teams.
Hell yeah. But also the fact that all 4 of those teams literally just joined those conferences.
Oh, well,
that's right. The Longhorns just got shifted.
Yep. And like
they don't get to play the Aggies anymore, I think, is a situation.
No, now they are going to play the Aggies.
Well, when I was a kid, that was like the game.
Yeah. Well, luckily, this is one of the few times where realignment made at least a little bit of sense.
Okay,
where that game will now take place.
Okay, I guess I got that backwards.
That's right.
It would be pretty. Yeah, and I mean, the BYU's technically not a newcomer because they joined last year, but like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't paying attention though. But still, like not the teams you think of.
The reason why I have an issue with BYU and SMU being there is that you should never mix religion with sports.
Well,
and that's just facts.
Well, SMU is hardly a Methodist school at this point. And also they played earlier in the year. I mean, BYU won. It was a kind of a crazy game, actually. Like,
yeah, well, looking back at it, it was a meaningful game. And BYU, dude, this Holy War game was.
Did they call it God's Bowl? Oh, sorry.
No, it's called the Holy War.
Yeah, that's
Holy
good.
War,
that's
baby.
Good.
Yeah, it was nuts. They got a little lucky, but also Utah could have scored.
But also
a single point.
Score a point.
Yeah, no joke.
I mean, this was definitely a wit special. Like, it was like the ghost of Andy Ludwig came back to coach the second half. Like,
just score a point and you'll win the game at home. Yeah, they suck. Yeah, and then I loved, ASU, baby. Maybe I should say ASU win the Big 12 or Colorado. Colorado used to be part of the Big 12. Now they are, but
that's what I thought. That's where I thought you were going. It was Colorado's going to win it.
Well, I just assumed
are they though?
The redemption of Deion Sanders. They're totally in position to win it.
They're totally.
Actually, Colorado and ASU are both in a position where if they win out.
ASU would be like
it would go down to tiebreaker scenarios, but
coach of the year
insane.
If Dillingham gets them to the Big 12 championship. Fucking coach of the year. I don't care who the other candidates are.
Was the Pac-12 just really stacked with good teams? It was just hard to tell.
Yeah. It was actually, yeah. Because let's look back at it. I mean, there'd be at least Oregon, ASU, looking pretty good. Colorado,
so many episodes where we're dogging on these teams.
It was just a knife fight. I mean, that was like actually. Let me take this back to Maryland. Like, remember what I was talking about? With Maryland, where I would watch a bunch of Big Ten teams in my film study project, the entire Big Ten, and it was like, this is a copy of a copy of a copy, and then I'd hit Maryland, and I'd be like, the East Coast's Pac-12 team, like Pac-12 East, and what it reminded me of was, in the Pac-12 every week, it's like, there may not be like the, a tippy top team, an elite team. There may not be a Georgia or an Ohio State here in the Pac-12, but every one of these teams, A, has talent on it, and B, has talent in the places where out of the blue they can come out of nowhere, drop 300 yards on a quarter, and all of a sudden you are in an absolute dogfight. You are fighting for your life with a new lunatic who's got knives coming out of every pocket. Like and in the Big Ten, it's like, they don't have knives coming out of every pocket. They've got runzas coming out of every pocket. Like, and then you go play Maryland, and it's like, hey, it's the Pac-12 team. They've got knives.
Like, I want to see like, let's say Wazoo is in the Big Ten and doesn't play Oregon, they'd have a pretty good record still. I bet they're making a bowl.
They've got a pretty good record right now.
They got
their
one
only
loss
is to Boise State.
Boise State, yeah.
Wow.
Wazoo could make the playoffs. Because they could win the Mountain
Boise
West.
State stumbles. I mean, it would require basically Boise State. Well,
there's a Mountain West conference game, isn't there?
They would not qualify for the G5 auto bid because they are not considered to be in a conference.
Oh, they're in the Pac-2.
They're considered to be an independent for the purposes of the CFP.
Oh, that's rough. I didn't even put that together because I just figured, they would
have to qualify as an at-large.
Oh, that stinks.
Which, yeah,
kind of funny, but that stinks. Wow.
But yeah, anyway, that's my point. Is that Maryland can do that sort of stuff because Maryland's a Pac-12 type of team. And to your question, Aaron, was the Pac-12 full of great teams? I don't know if the Pac-12 is full of great teams that then break containment and have now infected all the rest of the leagues. Now that the
that's
Pac-12,
what it sounds like.
I wish
it's
Stanford
more
was
like
live,
what you did was that you broke the lock off of the asylum and you let all the lunatics out. And so
got you.
Normal sane society who are normal people who just go to the bank and the grocery store and don't have knives in their pockets are now encountering all the lunatics who have knives in their pockets.
You're letting Kenny you're letting Kenny Dillingham, jump into the crowd screaming and just blend in.
Yeah, for real. That's wild, dog.
Oh man, I love that team. And by that I mean ASU. All right, let's get in to this next week's slate, which I think, just looking really quickly, it really shows you that this conference we're in is there's some people, but most the bottom whatever is bleh, and it's all the same.
Yeah, no, Oregon viewed the Big Ten the way that Tony Montana viewed Miami.
Yeah.
Dang.
Nah, man. Yeah. Let's get into it. The bottom 11.
Bottom 11.
Well, if the Oregon Ducks are the best team, period, full stop, which in fact they are.
Full stop.
We would be number one. We are the Quack-12 podcast.
Well, we are number one, actually.
We're in the conference called the Big Ten, though. There's 18 teams in the Big Ten. And there's only 12 spots in the Quack-12. We all know this. At the very bottom here, at the very top is number one, both in our hearts and literally. And then number 18, it's always going to be Washington. It just simply has to be Washington. They're the worst in many ways. All the other teams fighting for those 10 other spots, they're here. Now, the top three out of, if you take Oregon out of it, that's still pretty obvious. Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State. Pretty easy. Indiana, a gutsy win. They had to do it in a way that they don't normally do it, but they still won at home versus Michigan. Still a big win for that program. Even though Michigan is doo-doo this year. But then when you look at everybody else, I had a tough time. I just kind of was like, okay, I'm just going to do this. Is Wisconsin, should they be in the top of the next tier? Probably not. They didn't even play last week. But I just threw them there because why not? Because then behind them, I got, are these teams better than all these other teams? No, but they're coming off wins. UCLA. Yeah, UCLA beat Iowa, which was pretty fun. It took a lot from them, but this UCLA team, that's a big win. They may get to a bowl. It'd be pretty fun. Maybe they get to a bowl with a win over USC. That would be very fun.
It goes through beating their old Pac-12 foes. Yeah. It goes through beating Washington and USC, which is,
and then Fresno State, of course. And then Rutgers
and Fresno State, their longtime historic rival, academic peer, recruiting. That's about the level they recruit at.
We all know, that final game of the season is UCLA Fresno State, as always.
The good FSU.
Oh man, FSU. Rutgers also got a win, so I threw them at the top of the team because they beat freaking Minnesota, which surprised all of us. We all chose Minnesota.
It was surprising. Actually.
It is.
I mean,
surprising.
it wasn't. Yeah. I mean, honestly, Minnesota's probably a little ahead of their skis because I mean, that's how I described Minnesota. It was like Minnesota was just Illinois. It was just a good team that had been. It was just an average team that was been playing inferior teams, that just didn't make mistakes. And then what happened? They played Rutgers, which I thought they were better than Rutgers, but then Minnesota made a bunch of mistakes. Like if you look at the box score and
a couple
so
of
forth,
picks
like,
and such.
Yeah, it's a bunch of and then also like there's some they wind up having a bunch of Rutgers has a bunch of drives extended on pass interference that I don't know. I watched a couple of them, and I sort of thought the Rutgers probably got some ref assistance in this game.
Refs.
Intriguing.
Yeah, but Rutgers, hey, they've been losing games by having terrible defense, but their defense won it out for them this time. It was pretty fun. Not that I watched a single second.
I mean, more to the point is that Minnesota it was never and this was in line with our understanding and predictions of Minnesota. Minnesota was never a great team that was knocking teams around. It was always just an average team that would, like Illinois, it was always just an average team that just didn't make mistakes and took advantage of your mistakes. And so when game situations reversed, when they faced adversity, because when they would make mistakes and the refs weren't helping them out, like they were powerless. A worse team could defeat them, which ratifies our understanding of Minnesota. So
they certainly don't have the offense to be rallying back or have explosive plays to get Michigan, as we said, did in fact lose to Indiana. Indiana scored basically all their points in that first half, right? Am I correct? I watched most of the game, but I forget. A ton. I think they scored.
You are correct about this. Indiana just it's their second half is they throw an interception on the first play of their first drive. Then it's a punt, and a field goal. Oh no, they get. Yeah, that's right. It was 15-17, and they iced it with a field goal at the end.
And gotta give credit.
I know. I picked Indiana, and I described like Michigan, what Michigan does well as not being particularly helpful against Indiana. But like I play a game called Underdog Pick'em, in which you have to pick teams that are not favored by Las Vegas.
Nice.
And the way that the scoring system works is the size of the spread is how many points you get if the underdog wins. And so I like it because it's an interesting strategic balance. It's like, do you take a really wild upset because it would be the most amount of points, and so you're trying to find the most like expected point value. And this one, my calculator came up with like a really high expected point value. And so I investigated a little further after we talked and actually the other game that came up with a really high expected point value was Georgia Tech over Miami. So 2 of the 3 games that I took Georgia Tech over Miami, which popped for me and actually put me pretty close to first place in the standings.
I bet.
And the other one was this one. So even though on the podcast I took Indiana and got a point for the podcast, I was like rooting for Michigan hard, in this game for underdog purposes. And like, I mean, like, I don't necessarily think this was a clunker game for Indiana. I sort of just think this is who Indiana is. Like, I think, like when faced with, a high quality defensive line, they're kind of going to get run over. And they don't have the run game to sit on a lead once they have it. They have to be in maniac scoring mode all the time. Yeah. And if they're not, they can let a team sneak back in on them. And then Michigan, conversely, like this is probably what they would have gotten out of Davis Warden if they didn't pull him and put Alex Orji in. Like if Sharon Moore had the stones to have just stuck with like they shouldn't have been this is going to be a complex sentence. They shouldn't have been in the Davis Warren situation in the first place. They should have swallowed their pride, taken a transfer quarterback. Frankly, they should have identified and taken Curtis Rourke right?
Oh yeah.
Like he would have been in their price range. The fact that Curtis Rourke is playing for Indiana and not in Michigan, given that he played for the University of Ohio, like he's right there in your backyard, guys. You should have identified and taken him. The fact that Kurt Signetti stole him out from under you is a detriment to you, Michigan Wolverines. But anyway, they shouldn't have been in the Davis Warren situation in the first place. But once they were in the Davis Warren situation, they shouldn't have pulled him and put in Alex Orji. They should have just stuck with Davis Warren and let him develop. And he probably would have been at this level earlier and therefore would have been beyond that level and at a level where he could have won this game by the time that they played this game. That sentence makes sense?
I think so. I think so. But they did.
Therefore, I think Sharon Moore has really just blown this season, frankly. Like, this has been a not good coaching performance out of Sharon Moore, like, at all.
It'll be interesting. I don't know what that contract. I mean, I know for a while there was like he didn't even have a contract, so it should be like no harm, no foul. Bye. But
wow, I mean, this has definitely been a Mark Helfrich taking over for Chip Kelly thing, except way worse. Like I liked Mark Helfrich. I thought Mark Helfrich had a number of redeeming qualities.
Mark Helfrich went to a national championship game.
And he was just sort of like, and then eventually the roster management stuff caught up to him. He's like experiencing 2016 way faster. You know?
Yeah, no freaking joke. The only thing that'll save him maybe is that their fans will be like, well, we just won a national championship. I stopped paying attention to this season after the Texans lost. As far as
and also they're in rally around the flag mode because of the Stallions investigation.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. That seemed to help him out quite a bit, I gotta say. So we had let's get into this because this was fun. I watched basically all of this just because I thought it was funny. And apparently I could have gone to the movie theater and watched this in like crazy, I don't know, HD or something. I would have watched this in
Megalopolis?
No, I would have watched this in like 4D if I could have. Washington at number 6, Penn State. Penn State chose this game to do the whiteout. Okay, I guess. Makes sense. Not. It was over on Peacock, too.
I found watching this game to be more enjoyable than watching the Oregon-Maryland game.
Yeah, no, I had both on, which I usually don't do. Usually if the Oregon game's on, that is the only game I'm watching, but I figured this is going to be such a laugher.
I watched. It was funny. A relation of mine lives overseas, and usually the time difference is so big that we can't watch games together. But the we can watch night games, like so when Oregon had a night game, so we watched the Maryland game, and then the Washington Penn State game comes on. I was like, hey, turn this one on too. And so we were simultaneous, and we were like, the Maryland game, we were both like, hey, this is, oh man, this is kind of a bummer, and we're mad and stuff. And then it was just like champagne and fireworks watching Washington get their stuff pushed in by Penn State. It was definitely a way more enjoyable nightcap. It was like, oh man,
it was crazy. And Penn State just looked like Washington allowing them to look like just a complete team.
Washington made Penn State look like they had a good secondary.
Yeah,
like Washington made Penn State look like they had a good passing offense. Mm-hmm. You find somebody who loves you as much as Washington makes Penn State look good.
Dang. I picked Washington, didn't I?
I think you did.
Yeah.
I got it in the other room. You had one pick, I remember, that was you picked some upset. You may have picked UCLA, I want to say. I forget. I got the totals written down there though. But for me right now, I'm like that Washington game. I just think the motivation, the fact that we'll be coming off of a bye, the fact that it's like, well, win this and you go to the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just less worried about that one. But against Wisconsin, which Wisconsin's not a great team at all. They're hard to compare to Wisconsin's of old. Even their offense is in serious trouble. They have a minus at QB play, but I am afraid to just go on the road Like, I hope Wisconsin fans have something better to do. But
this year, this is what you should feel more comfortable about. This year, they installed heated field. Remember Rohan told this at the end of the podcast. They installed under the field surface. They installed like pipes that heat the field during the game, so as to melt the snow. You know, like how rich people have heated bathroom tiles.
Yeah,
so that when you get
my whole house
shower,
is like that.
Yeah, like yeah.
All
so
5 floors,
be like all toasty. Yeah,
yeah. No, I'm still feeling
cool.
Stoked. Like, I still think we're gonna be Wisconsin, but I'm more concerned for that one. They didn't, and the fact that they're coming off of a bye, that they get a week to be like, maybe this will work on Oregon. We're a little rested.
I mean, unless they're allowed to recruit wide receivers who aren't Jags in that bye week.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is they're not really built.
That's an acronym for just a guy.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Oh, I thought you were talking
like
about the lawyers for the Navy.
Yeah,
Actually, Judge Advocate General is not just for the Navy, but no, it's just a guy, meaning like not just an average athlete or even or at this level, it's
not to be confused with a Jaguar.
Yeah, not that either.
Yeah, they're definitely not Jaguars either.
And then I mean, we had some teams not play, like freaking Nebraska did not have a game. Illinois did not have a game. Purdue, well, they technically had a game. Do you have anything to say about Ohio State beating Purdue 45-0? Because I didn't.
Good God.
I did not get my prop bet. Ohio State shut them out.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I really, really didn't want that to happen.
What's the Purdue's win total? Still just one?
One.
I forget
who the FCS team. They are winless against teams in this subdivision.
That is a tough year. I am sorry, everybody.
I shouldn't have USC, who's coming off of a bye, second to last in this group, but I do, because it's like, well,
I mean, their most recent game was a loss to Washington, which, no, I think that's fair.
You should feel that way at least. You know?
Right.
And Northwestern technically beat Maryland, so I had them above there. Now, that is what happened last week. Let's get into our picks. I mean, Hith, do you have anything else to say? There's really
we didn't talk about UCLA Iowa.
Oh yeah, let's get into that.
The game of the week.
That was actually, I can't believe it, but I'm starting to feel some good thoughts for UCLA just because they started in such a hole. I do. I think in the long run, this was
crazy because this started with Ethan Garber throwing 2 picks.
Yeah. I think both teams have 3 turnovers, right?
No, it was the turnover bowl. Like, I mean, both teams, turned it over a lot. Garber
but UCLA, like they said, they went into this. They're like, we know like Mullings is a really good running back. Possibly best in the Big Ten, at least stats wise.
Mullings is Michigan. Is Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, Caleb Johnson. And that their goal was to be like, let's limit that guy. And to this defense's credit, they did. And if you do that against Iowa, you got a pretty good shot. You got a pretty good shot at beating.
It was clearly their defensive strategy. Yeah, they just did not fear their pass production at all. And to the extent that Iowa moved the ball, it was taking advantage of that. Their safeties were out of position all game. At Brian Addison played his worst game that I've seen him play for UCLA. Is why couldn't that version of Brian Addison show up against Oregon? But it just wasn't enough. Iowa doesn't have the passing production. It was every team should have played that strategy against Iowa. Honestly, Iowa could have just as easily won this game as lost it because UCLA didn't have any easier time and there's just so many turnovers in this game. But UCLA, they I really didn't like the decision to kick a in the third quarter. Iowa threw yet another pick, and UCLA they got a holding. They got a holding foul, so I understood why they kicked the field goal, but it was it felt like it just felt like the game was lost at that point. That they, that drive got shut down. that Iowa was going to come back and beat it, and then they immediately I immediately tied the thing up, and then UCLA did it. They led a 66-yard drive. They kicked a field goal at the end, but
and they got a record field goal length too, right? Like 50 yards.
Well, not on that one. That one they got up pretty close, and they kicked the field goal, and then they immediately forced a 3-and-out, which was Ferentz. That was the decision that Ferentz cost them the game. It was they're down. Iowa's down by 3. They get to 3rd and 6. It's 4 minutes left in the game. It's 3rd and 6. He punts. And it's dude, Iowa or UCLA can totally hold this ball for enough time to win this game. And that's exactly what UCLA does. And it's,
coward. He's a coward.
Yeah. It was basically, Kirk Ferentz cowarded his way into a loss.
Absolutely.
Dang.
He did. Just kind of like the Democratic Party. Okay, let's get into this next.
I don't know.
The picks. That's right. It's time to pick the big bottom. Well, I'll tell you this. Let's get some results. Some fun ones for Aaron, basically, because Hith and I chose a lot of favorites and chose the exact same. So that's not very exciting. But Aaron, you did get Rutgers over Minnesota, which is pretty dang fun.
Wow.
That's a good one.
It was kind of interesting, though, because we picked all favorites, and one of the favorites had a close call. That was Indiana.
Yeah.
And 2 of the favorites lost. That was Iowa and Minnesota. So even though you and I didn't have any differential, it was actually a somewhat exciting week.
It would have been a good week to apparently choose some upsets here. Wild
Aaron cards.
Did. Aaron, you did say that the Oregon-Maryland game would end in a tie.
Yes, with a handshake and a hug.
And a hug,
brotherly love,
they
played,
and that world peace would happen. Right. I would say as far opposite this last week as could happen happened. But technically,
did Eugene catch on fire and Satan show up in a crevasse?
Not yet. But I'll give you 0.5 for that one. Because Oregon, So I got you 0.5. Well, I got you 0.5.
Because I guess it did end in a handshake, right? Yeah.
It did end in a handshake. So there you go. Maybe. I don't know. So I here is last week's score. I was 2 behind Hith. Aaron is 11 behind Hith.
That's fine.
But with this week, well, you got a 0.5 in there.
I'm catching up, baby.
Catching up, I guess. Actually, I think you're falling behind because
I got 4. That's fine. I'm 11 and a half behind. No big deal. I can make that up.
Yeah, it's true. You can.
Playoffs are double. Playoffs are double. Everybody knows that.
Sure. I'll officially say they're double. Why not? Plus, we got the over-unders, which I think I was going to add 1 point for each one of those season total over-unders. I don't know what to do. Whatever will benefit me the most.
That's right.
And here we go. Let's make some picks. Aaron, you got to get crazy. You don't got to get crazy, but you do got to choose some upsets here. Now, this is the one that we had circled.
Huskies.
Oh, Aaron. Damn.
Got to do it. I just gotta stick with them, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're at home. They're apparently a completely different team at home. I'm gonna pull up for my own sake some Big Ten.
You're gonna look at stuff and not just go off feeling?
Nah, man. Nah. Big Ten football standings I want to look at. Because I just want to see. So Washington needs, I really am glad they lost that last one because Washington needs 1 game to get to a bowl.
They only have 2 games left because they've
got 2 games left. There is UCLA and there is Oregon. Now, I think
they're not going to win the Oregon game.
They're not winning the Oregon game. I don't really know what I want in my heart. I always want Washington to lose, sure. And I want UCLA to make it to a bowl game, which for them, this is a pretty crucial one. They got to win 2 of their next 3. They could beat Fresno State. They could beat USC, but this would be a good one to have. This is at home. for Washington, they have not lost there yet. No, well, they lost in Seattle, but they haven't lost at home. Yeah.
Right.
But and UCLA, now they got some good momentum coming into this. I would love for UCLA to win. I'd also like for the opportunity to rob Washington. Like if they come into Eugene and they're like, it's unlikely, but if we win this game, we go to a bowl. And if we don't go to a bowl. I love the idea of robbing them of that bowl opportunity. However, this is tough. This is actually a really, really tough game to pick. But because they are at home, I think that's literally the only reason. I'm going to go with Washington. I'm also picking Washington.
Wow.
Yeah, I would not be shocked.
You normally do pick the Huskies. You normally pick number one fan over here.
Hey, shut up. Yeah, I'll go with them just because I think it's the safest bet. But even like UCLA could totally win this game. I think it'll be close. Like one thing I don't believe is likely is that it's a blowout either way. These are actually pretty evenly matched teams.
Is it boring though?
No, I don't think it'll be boring.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be like great football. But I don't think
but usually not good football is really fun.
It can be awesome a lot of the times. So I think there's gonna be a good amount of turnovers and such. But I think you know what? Fuck it. UCLA's winning.
Whoa.
Something in my head just told me UCLA is gonna.
Dude, I love it. That's what I go off of.
UCLA, fuck it. That's literally what I'm going with. Hith, who do you got?
Yeah, good for you, Adam. Good for you, man. Yeah, because that allows me to play the role that I'm supposed to play on the podcast, which is math. Math. All the analytics, for the season to date, indicate Washington, and then, home field advantage, which is very significant for Washington. Washington nationally is number 2 in the country, for all like 130 something FBS teams, is the number 2 most powerful, home field versus, home road split effect. Math says take the Huskies, but literally everything that you said for why I would like UCLA to win, and also like my gut is telling me UCLA's is on the upswing for this game. In a sense, I kind of like the matchup.
And watching Washington's last 2 games, like they got blown out by Penn State. UCLA ain't no Penn State, but like USC,
they got blown out by Iowa. Washington got blown up by Iowa, and UCLA just beat Iowa.
USC should have beaten Washington too.
Yeah, exactly. I can totally see UCLA winning this game, and I basically agree with your assessment that there's no way this game is a blowout one way or the other. It'll be a close game. I think in a close game, take the home team, especially a team that is so, home dependent, and which knows absolutely in their bones they need to get this win in order to make a bowl game. And so in a 51-49 game, take the home team. But I can totally see UCLA winning this game. They just need 1 or 2 bounces to go their way. So yeah, I'm glad you took that one.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, this really does feel like a little bit of a toss up. And if UCLA wins this game, I'm not going to be like, wow, Deshaun Foster's really maybe building something there. I would be like, those players did a really good job. I would be like, they really rallied, which I guess you could give credit.
Oh, I'm just going to spend the 2 weeks dunking on the Huskies, because they're going to go into a bye week. They're going to bye week like knowing what's coming,
Yeah. Absolutely. I love it.
And it's going to be a close loss at home.
Yeah.
What that's going to revive about, Jed Fish can't win a close game.
He's like, we're that close from being a 10-win team.
We have
is he going to show up at practice wearing another Where's Washington shirt?
Dude, 2 blocks from our house, we have a hugely popular sports football watching bar.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to go there for this game, just fully decked out.
I think it's a Friday game.
It's a Friday night. Yeah, it's the second Friday game in a row for the Bruins.
Okay, yeah, that'll be party night that'll be hilarious.
That'll be great. That'll be great. I've literally thought of like how funny it would be to go to a game where it's like on the Palouse, at Wazoo, just go in full duck gear if it was like Washington versus Washington State and be like, you guys know who I'm voting for, who I'm rooting for, all right? Like, I know you don't like the Ducks, but you know who I'm with, all right? I'm your Gimli. You guys are Legolas, Been watching Lord of the Rings.
I do not get that reference.
Are you one of these dumb fucking morons that don't like Lord of the Rings? Is that you, Aaron?
Peter Jackson, his last good movie was Meet the Feebles, and I'll stand on that.
Not even The Frighteners? Come on, man.
It's really not that good. I watched it this Halloween season. It doesn't stand. CGI is trash.
CGI is not the best, but it's got some seriously good shit in there, man.
The correct answer to that question is Dead Alive.
Dead Alive, man.
Ooh.
Dead Alive. You kidding me? Dead Alive's one of the best.
Also, you know what? I am. God, we're so far away.
A baby ripped through a woman's skull.
I really appreciated the Beatles documentary because he came up with a whole new set of technologies just to make that movie happen.
Forget about The Hobbit.
Or that
Peter Jackson's great. Peter Jackson's fucking awesome.
He's fine.
Dead Alive.
He's a Kiwi. I'll allow it.
Dead Alive is absolutely masterpiece. You kidding me? Northwestern versus I kick ass for the Lord. Northwestern versus number 2 Ohio State, sticking with the purple. Aaron, Northwestern, I assume, yes. It would probably be one of the biggest upsets in Big Ten
But will
history.
you remind me, Ohio State has kind of been slippery lately, right?
I mean, they just beat someone 45-0.
Oh, that's
but
right.
it was Purdue.
It was Purdue, but
it's also Purdue.
Northwestern. How much better are they than Purdue?
Yeah,
we know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say
6 points better in overtime.
6 points better than Purdue.
All right, and then I'm gonna say Ohio State. Although that's boring because it doesn't do anything for me, and so
I would say
I'm going to say Northwestern by a field goal.
Wait, what? You going with Northwestern?
I am. Why not? Fuck it. I need points, right? I need to go for it.
Hith, would you agree with this? If Aaron pulls this off
3 points.
And Northwestern wins,
3 points.
I think we should give him 12 points.
Jesus.
Yes, he should get 12 points.
I'm down.
Wow.
Easy.
Dang, y'all are fucked.
Me. Dude, you will deserve it. If you call this like at this point of the season for Ohio State.
Yeah.
Northwestern, are they playing for bowl eligibility? Yeah. No, they need it. They need a win. They only got 3 games left. This would be they're
4-5, like somehow.
Yeah.
Like and they beat Maryland in that, that wacky game. I honestly do not know where the rest of their wins came from.
And I remember that.
Or they beat Purdue.
Game.
Let's see what else. Oh, they beat Eastern Illinois. They beat Miami of Ohio.
Yeah. Oh wow, Miami of Ohio.
That's it.
That sounds like Miami. What it is. I bet.
And then the remainder of their games are Michigan and Illinois. I don't know. Maybe they got a shot at winning a bowl, making to a bowl.
It'd be if they beat Michigan, you need to fire that coach right now, Sharon Moore. And then
fire him anyway.
And then yeah, I mean, I remember one of my favorite games.
If anybody cares, this game is the first of the Wrigley Field games. They're done playing them on the lake now. Although Wrigley creates its own sort of interesting thing, like because it's actually not quite big enough to host a football game. So like, I think they share a sideline. Like if you're running out the back of the end zone, you run into the monster. Like it's weird.
That is very funny. That Northwestern Duke game was one of my favorite games this entire year to watch. just two
teams
bad
try to lose.
teams. Yeah, just two teams that are like honestly god awful. Like that have some like enough defense where it's fun to watch, but yeah, oh, it's so fun. Ohio State is just they're gonna destroy them. Yeah. I don't want it to be true, but it would be the funniest thing that I've ever seen in my life if they lost to Northwestern, but I don't think it's happening. Hith, Northwestern?
No, I have Ohio State.
Boring, but okay. Ooh, okay. Illinois versus Michigan State. Michigan State, both these teams coming off a bye. Illinois recently lost to us. Michigan State lost to us. They lost to Michigan. I think they got
both of these teams are coming off of double losses.
That's right.
Yeah. Michigan State.
Michigan State wants
Michigan State's kind of on a heater of losses. They lost to Ohio State, Oregon. They beat Iowa, but then went right back to losing. They lost to Michigan. They lost to Indiana. Then they had the bye. Yeah. Illinois,
beat Michigan.
Right, yeah. And beat Purdue by 1 point in overtime. But then, lost to Oregon, lost to Minnesota, then hit the bye.
Oh man, Iowa is really like Schrodinger's team of the Big Ten.
Yeah.
It's like beating or losing to Iowa can mean anything.
I think I've always stated the same thing about them, which is that their defense is simply a gateway. It's a binary test. If you have a good offense, you name your score. If you have a bad offense, they shut you out. And so like, that was the interesting thing about UCLA posting some points against them was that they, hey, UCLA has gotten some things right, about their offense, which you like to see it. Meanwhile, the fact that Washington got pasted by them, confirmed, that offense is a mirage. I
agree. I would hate to be an Iowa fan or to live in Iowa. Illinois versus Michigan State. This is actually it go either way. Illinois is at home.
I think they want it more. I'm going Michigan State.
Well, I'll tell you this: Michigan State, they've already played 9 games. They got a 4-5 record, and they need to win at least 2 of those games. This is definitely a winnable game. Illinois already has bowl eligibility, 6-3. Which
means it's easier for them to lose it because they're playing soft.
Yeah, and like Illinois was one of those teams that's like they want to play scrappy defense. They want to march down the field little by little, not very explosive, but gutsy with the Altmaier. They are at home. Michigan State lives or dies by big plays from their young QB. Dang, this is actually a really tough one. You said the home team, right? You said Illinois.
I said Michigan State.
Oh, you said Michigan State. Okay. I don't. Dang, man. I'm kind of living in my vibe of like I'm thinking, what is Hithliday going to choose?
Sure.
If I were to guess what Hithliday's choosing, is I don't think he thinks. I think he thinks Illinois isn't very, talented, but they're at least more consistent than Michigan State and what they can do. And at Michigan State, when they win, it's because, they're just whipping out some big plays. I think Hith's going with Illinois, and I have enough confidence in Michigan State. Not enough confidence. I've got I could see how Michigan State wins this. I don't think it's very likely, but I'll go with them because I'm desperate. So I will also go with Michigan State. I'm backing Aaron. Hith, who do you got?
You called it correct. I'm going with Illinois. You mostly got it correct. I think that Illinois is a more consistent team than Michigan State. I also, like them at home. And math generally likes them as well. There isn't a single betting site, advanced statistical site, and then also, hey, Oregon played both of these teams. I have the records from charting on both of these teams, and it matches up, better for Illinois than for Michigan State. Although you're right, I can envision a scenario without much difficulty in which Michigan State, chucks it for a win. The matchup that I think actually causes Illinois to win this game is one of the things that I noticed about Illinois is that their secondary has a pretty decent ability to manufacture interceptions by baiting the quarterback into deep throws that they then pick off, which if there's one quarterback in the Big Ten that is prone to doing exactly that,
very baitable
trial. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Illinois comes away with like 3, maybe 4 interceptions in this game, and that's enough to give them, maybe even a 2-score win in a game in which they're only favored by, I think, 3. The home field advantage, but
I'll take a prediction. I think Illinois wins turnover battle 3-0, and Michigan State wins. I think it's one of those weirdo games.
Yeah, where Michigan State maybe like outplays them a bit or has like more explosive plays. And so like on paper, they should win it, but then Illinois gets enough turnovers. So that they, turn the tide. I could see something like that. The other thing that I'll say is a little less relevant, or less impactful than turnovers. But even though Illinois doesn't have statistically a great rush defense, I think the way that Michigan State runs the ball, Illinois' rush defense is actually set up because they play a 5 across rush defense. Actually, there's no gaps for Michigan State to run to, and Jonathan Smith will smash his face into that wall for a long time before he figures that out. So this will be weird. Like Illinois will finish the season with a bunch of games in which they have poor rush performances, and then you'll look and you'll see one spike for one game, and it'll be this game, and you're like, why is that? And it'll be because Jonathan Smith's rush attack versus this rush defense is a bad matchup.
There you go. On to the next one. Well, this is another not so fun pick. Aaron, you know what? Here's another 12er if you want. You can get 20.
If I pick Penn State, you're going to give me another 12
No,
points?
not Penn State, Purdue. The team that's won one game.
Wait, Penn State is still
They've lost one game against Ohio State by 1 touchdown.
Yeah, I don't think Purdue's got it in them anymore.
I don't think they ever did.
Yeah,
I mean, it is at home for Purdue.
But I mean,
really
I don't know.
Funny.
Let's go.
It's not a night game, though.
Yeah.
Let's go Penn State.
Yeah. This is also Purdue is famous in this conference for being the upset, the spoiler makers, they're called.
Oh.
But no.
Because they forget to refrigerate the milk?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's unfortunately gonna be Penn State. It's not even gonna be close. I think
it'll technically be close because Penn State doesn't play any game that's
I think it's gonna look like the Washington.
Blowout,
this is gonna look like the Washington game. And I think Penn State is pissed off enough and now just in like mode of like, let's try to get that 5 seed in the playoffs. Honestly, a pretty sweet spot to be. You get a home field advantage.
It is their strategy all along.
Yeah, that's why when they got to the red zone against Ohio State, they did anything but score a touchdown. Penn State's winning this. Purdue is bad. I think their basketball team would have a better shot at winning this football game than their football team. Yep, that's all I got. Hith, Purdue.
No, I have Penn State.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah, it's not happening. Not much to say. I think Northwestern has a better shot at beating Ohio State than Purdue. Well, no, actually, I think Purdue has a better shot than that, vice versa. But yeah, no. USC versus Nebraska.
In the sense that Penn State plays it's a weirdly it's a riskier strategy than
Yes.
their conservative reputation betrays, because like if something goes wrong, they're in a position to be to be blown up. It's just that stuff hasn't really gone wrong. But I mean, hell, like even Wisconsin was in a position to beat them.
Yeah.
And they're a way better team than Wisconsin. And it's just, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But like they're constantly in position to be upset, and it's just, it doesn't happen. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. And the reason that they're in position to be upset is because they choose a strategy that allows that to be the case. Like that's what happens when you're trying to win every game by 10 points, and you try to only have like 6 meaningful possessions every game. It's not, no game theorist would endorse this strategy. Like
well,
it hasn't bit him yet.
Apparently one would. James Franklin. USC versus Nebraska. I think this is actually a pretty solid game. I think any score is on the table. Like I could even imagine Nebraska like blowing out USC.
Really?
Like, I could imagine.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Just because it's like both these teams, the only thing they are consistent at is being inconsistent. I mean, Nebraska has looked pretty goddamn bad lately, but USC lost to Washington. USC lost to Maryland.
Yeah,
USC lost to Michigan. USC wants to keep their opponent in these games, and it's not like Penn State.
Nebraska, the other thing that's as a wild card is that they demoted their dud of an offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield, who, like, remember in the summer we talked about, like, I think Marcus Satterfield's a dud, and our guest TJ was like, "Oh yeah, he totally is." Like, and they like last week, like they hired Dana Holgerson, who got fired as Houston's head coach. They hired him as an analyst, and then like a week later have promoted him to be the offensive coordinator and play caller, which, like, I don't know how that's going to work out, but like, I don't know. He's probably an upgrade on Marcus Satterfield, because how could you not be? Schroeder's probably an upgrade on that guy. Like, and Schroeder's experience is playing, the video game. So, like,
yeah. I also think I would like to see if
and I lose.
So does USC. So yeah. I mean, if you're looking at pure talent, like USC has an advantage. They're at home.
Yeah, not like that's really helped them much.
No, not at all. And
talent and playing at home has not been real useful qualities.
No, not
USC,
really.
so.
Not really, especially at this point in the season for USC.
Oh, but also relevant is that, speaking of changes, USC benched Miller Moss, and they're putting in Maeva.
That's crazy.
Who, like, that's interesting. He's probably the quarterback of the future for Lincoln Riley. He was last seen playing for UNLV's go-go offense under Brennan Marion, which is, it's different from Lincoln Riley's power RPO scheme, but he's still, and so, like, the question is, like, how it's still, Miller Moss was recruited by Clay Helton to be more of a pocket passer, and so he's not really a fit for what Lincoln Riley wants to do. Lincoln Riley had to sort of adapt his play calling to Miller Moss's skill set. With Maeva, he's more of a fit athletically for what Lincoln Riley wants to do, but oftentimes kind of like the clashing furniture principle. Like, when you have a guy who's closer to what you want to do, but not the same thing, it's like, it's more of a difficulty in adapting him, because it's like he's got to unlearn a bunch of trigger points and then relearn your offense. So, like, that's going to be interesting. Like, is he going to make a bunch of mistakes? Am I making sense? Like, maybe he triggers off of the wrong thing, because it's like, oh no, wait, that was the old offense that I'm supposed to throw here, not there, as opposed to somebody who's coming to it as a blank slate. And we have no idea whether he's going to make those mistakes or if he's going to be gangbusters or something in between, because we've never seen him in this offense before, like wild card.
Yeah. Stuff to say. And it's not even like, I would say, like, and the USC's biggest problem was QB play, because it really hasn't been.
I mean, the biggest problem has been coaching errors.
Coaching fucking errors, yeah. Which coach still there for quite a while. Aaron.
But maybe the coaching errors were having to deal with a quarterback who didn't fit his offense.
Maybe. But why wouldn't they run the ball more then?
Well, on the other hand, I think actually really their biggest problem is their offensive line blows.
Yeah. And that'll just sink you. But Nebraska kind of blows too. Aaron, who you got?
Okay, here's the deal. I can't give up on them now. I've chose them too many times. So I got to just stick with them. I'm going with Nebraska.
You going with
Even
the bug
though I
eaters.
really don't like white dudes in red hats.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Nebraska.
With like horribly scary faces. That just looks like. Yeah, no, I get you. Hey, if they win this, they go to a bowl. That's pretty cool too. And if USC loses this, then they have to win all their remaining games to make a bowl, which is bonkers. I mean, they beat LSU to start off the season. Not that LSU is some like great team, but it's still just I don't know. It's amazing. I actually am going with USC. I think the change in QB, even if it doesn't drastically improve the game, will probably be enough of a wrinkle. And like Nebraska doesn't need like many obstacles in their way to get tripped up. I think USC, I think it's gonna be an ugly game. I think it'll be close, but in the end, I think USC will just have a few explosive plays enough to win this one. USC at home. Yes. Hey, who do you got?
I'm also going with USC.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, look,
it's one of those things where it was like, I kept being like, oh, well, USC, there's all these things wrong with USC. Like, therefore, I want to go with Nebraska. And then once I hit Nebraska, I'm like, but why would they win? And then I kind of
honestly, I got to the same place, which is the win case for Nebraska is that the best matchup for Nebraska is their couple of starting defensive linemen, Hutmacher and Robinson, versus USC's defensive line or offensive line, which I think gets them something. But you don't win a game alone that way. You need the rest of your defense to be performing. And I don't believe in the rest of Nebraska's defense.
You've been skeptical of their secondary even in preseason,
and it requires the new quarterback to just be, dog shit, which is, I mean, it's a possibility, but like, kind of hard to believe that Lincoln Riley would biff it on a quarterback because all he does is train up Heisman level cornerbacks, and that Lincoln Riley would make a bunch of coaching errors, which look, he's been doing that, but like it would be Lincoln Riley in a 1-score game against Nebraska, the team that's the king of losing 1-score games. It's like all the things that are like loss factors for USC are also loss factors for Nebraska. Meanwhile, USC possesses win factors that aren't good matchups for Nebraska. I think that USC has definitely a better wide receiver core than Nebraska has, defensive backs. I think that USC has, a much better, backfield, defensive backfield, linebackers and defensive backs than Nebraska has playmakers. Ceteris paribus, I think USC has the advantage and it would take, weird stuff happening for Nebraska to win the game. Although, of course, as you say, this game is ripe for weird stuff happening. So it's like, run the simulation 100 times. I think, USC only wins 55 of them, but like they win 55 of them. So give me USC.
This is this week's stoppable force meets movable object game.
Hey, speaking of USC, John Robinson died this week. He's best known as USC's head coach for a long time, which they won quite quite a lot. He was an Oregon tight end. He played for Oregon's 58 Rose Bowl team and was an Oregon assistant coach for a long time under Casanova and Jerry Fry. He was also the first couple of years that he coached at USC. He was an assistant under John McKay, who's been dead for like 20 years. John McKay was also an Oregon Duck. So it's like USC's best two coaches ever were both Oregon guys. I think after USC moves on from Lincoln Riley, they should also go with, honor the tradition, go with an Oregon guy and hire Justin Wilcox.
Well, hit the day. What was the dude's name again?
John Robinson.
Did he have his own joke book?
No, he didn't.
I mean,
probably not.
He was famously
not funny.
Recondite. No, he was he was very stoic on the sidelines. He would, dude could be, USC was famously would have incredibly athletic plays. Dude would do backflips into the end zone. Jump over guys backward. The original backflip into the end zone, and he would just be standing there like clapping. It's like, you get like 2 claps, like nice job, son. So I doubt he had a joke book.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Maryland versus Rutgers, another one where you're like, someone's got to win. This could be an interesting one here.
And Rutgers just won.
Rutgers just won. Maryland just lost. Maryland 4-5 overall, 1-5 in conference play. Their one win against USC, which is very funny. Rutgers 5-4, 2-4 in conference play. They just won a game too against Minnesota, a team that was on the up and up. Aaron, who do you got?
I'm going with the Terps.
You love the Terps, don't you?
They're our brothers from other mothers.
Yeah, Aaron.
Don't you know?
Because Rutgers, the win they're coming off of was, I felt like, more of a bad game for Minnesota than a great, season defining, we're a different team now game from Rutgers. I still think their defense is, a little open for points. And Maryland, they do got to, we saw a bit of it. Like, they got a pretty good passing game. And I think there's going to be enough explosive plays from Maryland to maybe actually really take off in this one. So I'm going to go with the Terps too. And in that case, even though Maryland hasn't had the best season, many times they haven't had the best season, I think will win this to get one step closer to a bowl game. And a bowl game for them, I think, would overall be, hey, they're feeling good. Where it could have gone, I think they'd feel pretty good about that. Who do you got, Hith, Maryland or Rutgers?
I have Maryland. I think while I think Oregon did them some favors with some of their strategic choices last week, I think that Maryland's performance last week was closer to what Maryland just typically does. Whereas and so if anybody has like warm feelings about, hey, Maryland played pretty tough, that's pretty much how they play every game. Pretty much whereas Rutgers, their performance against Minnesota, that I feel like that was more out of line with their typical performance this season, and they're probably due for, more of a regression. And so like the typical Maryland performance versus the typical Rutgers performance is probably a win for Maryland. And statistically, there isn't an advanced stat site or charting database that disagrees with that. So yeah, give me Maryland at home.
There you go. And last but not least, it's actually the most important game, Wisconsin versus number 1 Oregon Ducks. The last time these two teams met on the field was the 2020 Rose Bowl, in which Justin Herbert ran it in for the win. Aaron, who you got?
I got Wisconsin all day on this one.
No, you don't. Do you really?
No, I don't. Fuck off. I got Oregon, baby.
Okay, good. I would have been like, all right. I mean, like, out of all the picks, it wouldn't be the craziest pick. It is against the number one team, but, Wisconsin's coming off a bye. That's kind of all I got to say, honestly. I was trying to put a case for them. They're at home. People will be drunk, having a good time, maybe. That's all I got. I mean, we know Oregon is looking a little weary, both mentally and physically, but yeah.
The only way Wisconsin is going to win this game is if that heated field somehow makes the Ducks a little extra sleepy.
It would make me sleepy.
I mean, when I get warm feet, I fall asleep. That's just what happens.
Get some beer in your belly, some cheese. Suddenly there's a warm field. Ugh, I'm out. But yeah, no, I got Oregon. Oregon's going to dominate. And I believe, was it Wisconsin? Someone on their coaching staff, I forget his exact position, but just got a DUI.
Ooh,
yeah, Jack Del Rio.
Jack Del Rio, right? Yeah,
he's been dismissed.
Good. So not great.
That's pretty messed up. Don't do that. I mean, no. Appears that nobody was injured. He just ran into some stationary objects, but don't do that.
I mean, we have so many other options, especially at that pay grade. Just fucking Uber, my dude.
That is the crazy thing, ain't it? When it's like people who are rich as hell, like so rich, and then they're just like, nah, I'm driving home. Like, I don't know. I get it.
Well, because paying a ticket is equivalent to buying an Uber for them. What's an extra $400?
Yeah.
I guess this motherfucker lost his job, so he should have been asking a different question. But anyway,
yeah.
Del Rio wasn't. I don't believe he was one of the on-field coaches. I think he was just an advisor to the head coach. There's sort of an informal role. So
sounds like a guy I'd want giving me advice.
It beats me, man. I doubt like the distraction factor. I doubt it's relevant at all.
No.
Although, honestly, I have not liked the way that Luke Fickell's assembled his staff, and Del Rio's just the tip of the iceberg. Dude hired Alex Grinch to be his safeties coach. He was a terrible safeties coach at USC. He was actually arguably a worse safeties coach than he was a defensive coordinator. Hired Phil Longo to be his offensive coordinator. It's been a disaster. His way he assembled his staff, he totally whiffed the offensive line coach that he got, the first time around. And then he had to, essentially demote that dude. It's kind of been a train wreck as his hiring practices.
And a lot of the stuff where, if this was a Wisconsin team of the past, like the generic Wisconsin team, I'd be even more afraid because it's skill position, they don't really have it, but in those trenches or, they play old school football, they kind of lost that a bit too.
That's actually been the most interesting thing about watching their tape is that their offensive line, they don't got it in the run game. They're not good run blocking. And as such, whatever they're getting in the run game is just the running back, manufacturing an extra yard or two through muscle. And they really only have one running back, Twee Walker, the Oklahoma transfer, who can do that. But they because the offensive line can't open up holes, they generate no explosive rushing at all. So, to the extent that they can move the ball, more than 4 yards, it has to come through the passing game. And then, as you said earlier in the podcast, they got a minus at quarterback. They got minuses at wide receivers, and they've got minus at offensive coordinator. So they're unless they're playing the 3 worst teams in the conference, which they had the good fortune to do. They played Purdue and Rutgers and Northwestern, and so for a minute there it looked like they had an offense, but that was fool's gold. But here's the thing about their offensive line: while they can't run block at all, I don't really think pass blocking has been an issue for them. And they played some some halfway decent, pass rush teams in Iowa and Penn State. I mean, not perfect or anything. They would eventually give up pressure, but I mean, Locke had enough time to throw. That's why I'm comfortable in saying, no, it's definitely the quarterback, wide receiver, OC combination, and not just the offensive line, getting eaten alive. Which, like, Adam, from all these interviews that we do, that like 99% of the time when a team's got an offensive passing problem, it's just like offensive line front and center. That's the problem, is that, the O-line just getting eaten up. And I really don't think, it's like last on the list of passing problems that they have. And so for the Ducks, the interesting thing will be, let's see if the Oregon Ducks defensive line does better on that question than Iowa or Penn State did and gets to the quarterback, because while I do think that Iowa and Penn State have good pass rushes, what I don't really think is true of those teams is I don't really think they have good athletes in their secondary. And so it'll be, so to the extent that those teams were getting sacks, they were like coverage sacks. It was like, Wisconsin. So it was like Wisconsin's Jags at wide receiver versus Penn State's Jags at secondary. It was like a total mid-off in terms of watching those routes get run. So I would be interested to see, if Oregon can, get some sacks. On the other hand, I sort of think that Locke's completion percentage is as low as it is because he just like hurries it up. He's just like, I'm not going to hold on to this ball and take a sack, after 4 seconds of waiting. I'm just going to throw the ball too early. And then he just winds up, essentially throwing the ball into the bleachers or into the dirt. So you might be deprived of those sacks that you're craving. That's the only interesting question on that. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I think for 2 straight years now under Fickell, F+ has thought that Wisconsin has had a very high quality defense. They've been rated in the top 25 in F+. In fact, last week in F+, they were 25 going into the bye week, and then coming out of the bye week, they went up 3 spots to 22. Because I think, they're even, it's like, well, Iowa, we think even more highly of after losing to UCLA. I don't know, man, or Penn State, maybe we think even more highly of after, beating the snot of Washington, I guess. I think it's a mirage. I don't really think very highly of Wisconsin's defense at all. I didn't think highly of them in 2023. I don't know why they got ranked 16th, a 5-7 team getting ranked 16th in defense, that was giving up that many points. It was like, I don't see it from charting. I don't see it from the final performance. I don't see it from the scores that they're giving up. No, I don't know why F+. I don't know why this should be, but I believe that F+ got fooled in 2023, and I believe F+ is getting fooled again. I don't say this all the time. Most of the time when fans complain about, advanced stats getting fooled, they're wrong. 99% of the time, they're wrong about that. Advanced stats are correct and fans are wrong, but every once in a while it happens, and something that Wisconsin is doing is causing F+ to get fooled. This defense sucks against the run. It is absolutely just god awful, atrocious against the run, and they're terrible at giving up explosive passes.
Which means Will Stein will be playing the short pass game this entire
and I think that most of their pass efficiency defense just comes from playing like the worst quarterbacks. I think really that's just what's happening, is that advanced stats can't see the difference between playing bad quarterbacks and playing and your defensive pass defense being good. Like the quarterbacks, on average, the FBS teams that Wisconsin have played have ranked on average 82nd in pass production nationally. They produce only 208 yards of passing offense each week, and that includes Alabama and USC. That's how bad the rest of the teams are. The average passer rating for the quarterbacks that they've played is only 128.2, which is terrible. It's almost a full standard deviation below median. Let me repeat that. The average quarterback that they've played is a full standard deviation below average. Like, that's how, like, they just play bad, they just play bad quarterbacks, like the best teams that they've played, with the exception of Alabama, they played Jaden Milroe, but everybody else, like they played USC with Miller Moss, who got pulled, right? They played, Penn State with, Drew Aller, who doesn't push the ball down the field. They played Iowa with their backup quarterback, and their starters, no genius. That's the other thing is advanced stats can't see that either. They can't see when you're playing the bad quarterback. I just think the advanced stats are getting fooled, and they don't really have a good pass defense. So yeah, I've been talking for a long time because I got to write an article about Wisconsin. I know, sort of like I dumped all this stuff. And that's the time. But if anybody sees that number about Wisconsin, like, oh my god, the 25th ranked defense, and they were the 16th ranked defense last year, I'm just like,
yeah, yep. And that's just picking the big bottom, which means we only have a few more things to do. One of them is we got to make these super specific predictions. Now, Aaron, do you feel prepared to start us off here?
Yes.
Okay.
They're going to elect to kick to us to open up the game. We are going to run it back for a touchdown.
Ooh.
Wow.
I like that. Is very specific. Who's doing it? You don't have to.
Tez Johnson.
Oh, he's going to be healthy.
No, he's not. He's not going to be in this game. I don't think. I think
we'll keep him Noah Whittington, Evan Stewart.
Whittington has been dancing a little bit extra as of late, and so I think it'll probably be him. He's been enjoying the juke a bit more.
Oh yeah, he's getting some more touches, and he's been rewarding them. My super specific prediction is that the most amount of points that have been scored against Wisconsin was by number 9 Alabama, 42, followed by USC, who had 38. I predict we're going to score the most amount of points in any team. So I think we will score more than 42 points against Wisconsin on the road. That's pretty good. In my opinion. And Aaron's got us running in the opening, which we do elect to take, right? Opening kick. Running touchdown. Okay. And how about you, Hith?
Wisconsin has basically 2 cornerbacks that they play. I mean, they have more, but they stick basically with their 2 cornerbacks for most of the game. One is Nazir Forquarian, the other is Ricardo Hallman, number 3 and number 2, respectively. The fact that they have a cornerback whose name starts with the word 4, but whose jersey number is number 3 pisses me off to no end. Anyway, they have a huge split in their number of targets. Like opposing offenses go after Forquarian at something like 6 times the rate that they go after Rico Hallman.
Wow.
It's kind of nuts, which tends to make everybody think, me included, that Hallman must be doing a great job, like he must be total lockdown corner. Every time the Ducks have encountered a situation like that, in apparently lockdown corner, Will Stein apparently takes it as a personal affront and lights that dude up. It's like the only time that dude ever wants to throw bombs is when they're like, well, we think we have a lockdown corner and we'll put that guy on Evan Stewart or whoever your best receiver is. And then he's like, well, yeah, I'll show you, buddy. So yeah, that's my specific prediction is that Hallman will be placed on probably Stewart, and that you'll see some shots taken and that guy will get lit up.
You think
I like that one?
Yeah. Will Stein has the new guy in prison approach, find the biggest guy and take him down. I got a couple things to end this bad boy here too. First of all, last week we we said the only frog joke that I could remember, and we bleeped it out, rightfully so. There were some people who even a couple of people, more than 0 people, that were hitting me up and be like, "Tell me that joke. I want to hear it."
Yeah,
I will not say it now, but I did get they did post some of his old jokes that were more fitting and more to his standard, and actually fits the time pretty well right now. So I wanted to read a couple of those. Not great. They were never very good jokes. But what did the fly say as it landed on Mike Pence's head during the VP debate?
Who's this piece of shit?
I mean, it's basically it. Is this stool taken?
But up.
Yeah, there you go. And this one's a good one. This one's more, we get you more motivated, maybe. Don't wait. Is it a joke? No, but don't wait until you're on your deathbed to tell people how you feel. You could be too weak to raise your middle finger. These are solid examples of the joke books that he sold for decades. So, and then one last thing on a historic note: if it happens, just do it again. You're just more prepared.
Well, if you go to Florence on certain hot days, you can still smell it.
I mean, in Eugene, every once in a while, the emeralds become the exploding whales, and those hats and those what do they call it, jerseys or whatever, they sell like hotcakes. Like, they're not cheap, and people love them, and people buy them like crazy. Like, they should literally they should have changed the team name to that. Maybe they'd still be sticking around in Eugene if they did.
So, okay, a donut shop needs to do an eclair that has a cherry filling and call it a whale bomb or something like that.
That'd be a Voodoo Donuts thing where it doesn't taste that good and it's super expensive, but you're like, well, it does look like an exploding.
It looks like a whale and it's got blood.
Looks like a whale. I'll get you that.
You know, though, who was the governor that decided that all the beaches were highways, basically, and that's the reason why it was the Department of Transportation that had to deal with it?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's the story. The reason why it was the Department of Transportation blowing it up is A, that's all they knew how to do, and B, an Oregon governor, to keep them preserved, put all of Oregon's beachfront under the jurisdiction of the highway by calling it a.
Well, I'm honestly glad they did.
It was more than 100 years ago. It was Oswald West, 1930.
Oh, wow. It was that long ago. I thought it was like a 50s or 60s thing.
Well, and on that note of Oswald West, no. What were you saying?
Well, it's re-ratified in 1967 with the Beach Bill, but it was originally, Oswald West.
Okay. I'm glad they did it. It's on. I love watching that every year. It's very funny. I'm glad those people's property got destroyed. I guess, I don't know. It makes me happy. Makes you happy every time I see it. No whale died in the making of it. It died right before, probably. Yeah. But, you know,
it died to make it.
It's just also just funny to do something that stupid and to have it documented.
The best part is just how confident the dude is. Just like, oh yeah, this will be fine. We totally think this is gonna work. We just need lots of dynamite and this. Yeah, no, we'll just disintegrate this.
And now we got someone in office who just chops off whale heads for fun and brings them home. So that's pretty cool.
Do they not have a? Well, it's the transportation, right? So you'd think they'd have a crane and a dump truck.
They had them. Is that more fun than putting a bunch of dynamite in there, though?
No, it's not. No, it is not.
It honestly reminds me of Tremors a lot. The look of that dead whale. It really reminds me of the Tremors. You know, the movie. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for coming on today. Go over to Addicted to Quack. Oh yeah, Reba was in there. I forgot about that. Early Reba and Kevin Bacon. Not early Kevin Bacon, but yeah. Go over to Addicted to Quack. Read Duct Tape. Just a wonderful site, managed and edited by our very own Hith today. Thanks for hopping on, Hith.
It was my pleasure. It was great talking to you guys. I got to roll. I got Wisconsin team to look at.
Get out of here.
And on that note,
there's been very little overlap of Wisconsin versus teams that Oregon played this year. It's really been the Purdue game, so I've got a bunch of catch up to do. But then I get a break. It's this whole bye week to go over.
Bye week. I'm freaking ready for it, man. I could not be more ready for a bye week. And on that note, quack quack.
Quack quack.